Balance of your argument from here on out, there is to be no mention of Rihanna being in the courtroom or the kids being in the courtroom.
Just them not being in the courtroom, but I can mention, here's the problem, Your Honor. The defense got up and they talked about the impact of this case.
I said in the courtroom.
Oh, just don't mention it in the
Do
courtroom.
not mention again Rihanna being in the courtroom or the babies being in the courtroom. There should be no mention of that again.
Right, I'm just trying to understand, but I can mention the issue, just not talking about being in the courtroom.
Mr. Tacopina went into that.
Okay.
You're entitled to.
I wasn't
No
trying to-
mention
I
of
wasn't
them
trying
being
to
in the courtroom.
report. I just wanted to understand what we were
Yes,
asking.
there should be no mention.
We'll do it.
All right, let's bring in the jury.
Yeah.
He wants no mention
Be very,
of
very careful.
ASAP Rocky's kids and the mother of his kids in the courtroom. No mention of her. If you're just tuning in, this is day 13. The prosecutor is going to be giving, is in the middle of closing arguments. It's been a long one. If you've been watching, the consensus seems to be that he is innocent. I believe he's innocent. I believe it was a prop gun. I believe it was self-defense at best. And that would make him go home. So we're waiting to see what happens with this. Drop a comment where you're tuning in from. And yeah, let's keep watching. We can watch what's going on. Well, the maximum he could get is 25 years. ASAP Rocky, he's in trial for allegedly shooting a gun at a guy named Relly. They found that Relly's really unreliable. His testimony was all over the place.
So that was
So it's hard to take his word
key
for
evidence
it. Now
in
we're
this
going to
case
listen to the
regarding
prosecutor
could not have been
try to
more
justify
plain what he
why the
said.
jury
Could not have
should
been
convict
more credible regarding the
ASAP
issues
Rocky.
that matter.
Again, I think
And what
he's
are the issues that
innocent.
matter?
And this is the power of jury duty.
The event shot.
Be the 1 in 12 to forever
The
impact
defendant brought
someone's
a gun,
life. They could
a
send
real
him
gun
home
to the scene.
or not.
What's
Let me know that the
is that
audio's
it's
good,
very clear,
and let's
you
watch
heard the
this.
testimony
Let me know the
before.
audio's good.
While
Thank
he
you.
said he was, quote, mediating, which, please. At one point in time, what you heard him say, he changed the word, which my age is getting. What happens when you get on the more mitigating, thank you. Later on he said no, he was trying to mitigate. Sometimes that's called a gaffe. A gaffe is something that you don't mean to say but which turns out to be true. He was trying to mitigate for Rocky. And how do you know? Because he called Rocky immediately afterward. And then he's saying, I don't remember what Rocky said. I couldn't tell you. Why is he calling him? Why is he taping this? And why during this call, repeatedly, ask for a bag, meaning ask for money. Relly's telling him, I asked for money. He doesn't want to give it to me.
Sorry about that.
While he continually says, hey, basically, why are you taking it to the guys? Why take it to the board?
There, now the audio
Meaning,
should be
why
better,
bring
by the
cops
way.
into it?
I was using the wrong
He is
input.
doing the bidding for the defendant. And what's amazing, and again, it's not right, but the defendant, according to Relly, could have eliminated this whole situation by simply taking care of it with Relly. It wouldn't have been right. It wouldn't have changed what he did. But Relly apparently would have been on an island where we couldn't have found him. He didn't want to do it. His choice, his option, his consequences. Now, the defense said that we believe, this is a quote, that that tape is, quote, death to our case. I don't know what he means by death. That is not death to our case. That tape was the key to Relly's credibility if you believe it is important. In other words, that tape backs up every material point that Relly has made. Okay, believability of witnesses. In determining the believability of a witness, this is Calprin 226, you may consider anything that has a tendency to prove or disprove the truthfulness of the witness. Again, I'll be very clear. Twelvey and ASAP Lou came in there, and they repeatedly lied just about almost everything. I'm not going to go through all the inconsistencies. Twelvey didn't want to concede that he's reliant on the defendant. Didn't want to admit that he's talked to the defendant. If you believed Twelvey and Lou, they've had almost no conversations about what happened in this case since the start. And if you believe Wally, even though Wally is, quote, mediating the situation, he's never talked to Rocky about it. He's never talked to Twelvey about it. How do you mediate a situation when you're only talking to one party? It's just not true. They lied. The difference between Relly and the defense witnesses is Relly was hostile. Relly was angry. Relly threw things. Listen, that wasn't appropriate conduct. You saw the judge. The judge was very frustrated with him. Everybody was frustrated with him. Listen, Mr. Prosecutorial, that was his witness. That's no easy task for him. But in the end, his credibility about what counts in this case was absolutely proven, and it was proven through their own witness. The evidence in this case, remember, we didn't have that tape. That tape came from Wally. We heard that tape only slightly before you did. Wally comes in and testifies, they play a snippet, and we play the rest. So when you're looking at the factors, you're looking at what witnesses are to be believed. They called 3 witnesses. All 3 of them perjured themselves. All 3 of them lied. All 3 of them came in to protect the defendant. And although they were calmer and more respectful, they perjured themselves in material areas. Relly, on the other hand, was truthful about everything that counted. So the defense focused on the fact that basically you can reject the testimony of Relly if you find that he lied about anything. However, Calprin 226 tells you do not automatically reject testimony just because of inconsistencies or conflicts. Consider whether the differences are important or not. So listen, is it true that Relly, at points in time, was untruthful during his testimony? Absolutely. When he's saying, I don't know my girlfriend's name, of course he knows his girlfriend's name.
Yeah, they never found a gun.
When he's saying he doesn't know
I believe it was
about
a
place
prop
in
gun.
Miami that he purchased, of course he knows.
And the
But
castings
those
they found, I guess, Relly
those
found after apparently
inconsistencies, those
detectives were there
They're not only
searching
not
for
important,
evidence.
they are completely irrelevant.
But apparently he found them. And then he lied about being in a gun range
In talking about ASAP,
where he could have gotten those castings and shooting a gun where he could, those castings could have come from.
Okay, let's talk about the injuries to Relly's hand. Now the defense said, hey, prosecution, you did not call a witness to come in here and say that that is a wound from a gun. How is somebody going to be able to come look at an injury and tell you where it came from? Now here's what you have to ask yourself. If there was something about that injury that was inconsistent, where it could not have come from a firearm.
Is this an exhibit? It's not evidence.
I believe this is the correct exhibit. Is this a...
It's the incorrect.
Oh, you know what? Hold on a minute. Let me back it up. That's my fault. I have the wrong picture. Excuse me. The same. Let me change it. Thank you. Okay. This is the correct exhibit. So we're still talking about the injury in the hands. And you know, without question, that if there was an expert who could come in here and testify, you know what? Those injuries could not have come from a graze wound. They would have called that witness. And again, how do you know? Look at the team that's standing over there. Look at the fact that they called in Wally. The purpose of calling Wally, bring him out from France for thousands of dollars.
Comment in the chat goes.
Was to simply
Comment in the chat goes.
Relly with the fact that
Wow, he introduced something not in evidence.
So if there was
crazy.
a medical professional who could come in here and tell you, well, that didn't come from a gunshot, you would have heard from them. And the failure to call a logical witness is something you can consider.
Doesn't make him guilty.
Consider. And when the defense says, wait a minute, the people didn't call somebody in to testify, well, you have to ask yourselves, if we call someone in to testify, what are we going to be able to get from them?
As many resources as they may
Common
have,
sense. You don't have to be an
the
expert.
prosecutor has more.
Who can look at an injury like this and say, yeah, that came from a bullet? You can't. You can look at it and go, okay, could it be a graze wound? Sure. So if the defense had an expert that was going to say what they wanted, you would have heard from them. Okay, let's talk about ills for a second. This was, again, the defense went all in on a couple of things. One of the things they went all in was that if there were casings at the scene, LAPD would have found them. Well, they didn't realize that the prop gun put out casings as well, and therefore the question isn't that LAPD missed the 9mm casings in this case. The issue is that without question, whether it was the 9mm or the prop gun, it would have left casings, and LAPD missed it. Why? We'll never know. Why did Relly find it? Well, he had the advantage of knowing exactly where it was. Same thing with ills. Again, the plan was clearly from these witnesses.
No, I'm not buying that if
we're
I'm
going
on
to build
the
up the
12.
fact that Relly gave Ills a beatdown. This had to do with his strength, how strong he is. He's punching him in the fist. Remember the judge? I still think there's a difference between a closed fist and a regular fist. But the judge, if you remember, when I mentioned closed fist, the judge said, well, a fist is a fist. It doesn't really matter. Their testimony was, and even today, you've got the defense saying how Relly is landing haymakers on Ills. They said that he was bleeding. Okay? Relly's a big guy. He's very strong. They said he was punched in the face at least 3 times. Well, I guess they didn't realize we were going to have a video the next day, less than 24 hours later. And this is from the video. Look at his face. No injuries. No injuries. Nothing. 0. Still photo from the video. Nothing. That is not the face of somebody
I don't know, is that
that was
nothing?
punched in the face repeatedly, given a beating by a large, strong man less than 24 hours before. Someone who they said was bleeding from an injury to the lip when we see nothing. And by the way, where is Ills? Ills is his friend, Rocky's friend. If you think for a moment that Ills would have had something helpful to say in this case, they would have called him. And when they said, wait a minute, the people needed to call him, why on earth would it make sense for the people to call one of the 3 individuals who was clearly involved in ambushing Relly in the first place and who is reliant on the defendant for his career? If Ills had anything helpful, they would have called him.
Objection to
So I brought this up in voir dire, and this is really important, an idea that I wanted to make sure you guys understand. We mentioned that we might have to be a little bit aggressive on cross-examination. And I wanted to make sure, and I asked you all in advance, hey, listen, if we have to be aggressive in cross-examination with witnesses, are you going to hold that against us? You all said that you wouldn't. Now, whether you all found Mr. Przlemek to be too aggressive, too loud, too mean, I can't control this man. I could try, but it's impossible. And again, I make that joke because obviously, I'm an intense guy. This is a serious situation we're in. And Mr. Tacopina got up here and he explained to you what it's like to be a defense attorney, what it's like to have what he said is an innocent client. Let me tell you something. I want you to imagine right now that someone you cared about was a victim. What kind of prosecutor would you want? Would you want somebody who takes what they're doing seriously, who is aggressive, who does their job, and who goes after witnesses who need going after? So I'm not asking you guys to like me. It'd be nice if you did. That's not what this case is about. It's not about me, my personality. It's not about Mr. Tacopina's personality. It's about what the evidence in the case is. And there's a great quote. Professor John Henry Whitmore, Northwestern Law School dean, he also wrote a series of books, legal books. He was a scholar. And what he said was, cross-examination is beyond any doubt the greatest legal engine ever invented for the discovery of truth. The defense put up 3 witnesses who lied about basically every material fact they were asked about. Those lies were exposed through cross-examination. Was it gentle? It wasn't. But that's what it took. And I won't apologize for it. I said before, I can't expect you all to do your job if I don't do mine. All right, let's talk about what the elements are of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, 245B. 1, you don't need to actually touch someone with it. So the fact that did the defendant touch Relly with the gun on the first incident, it doesn't matter. By the way, he pulls the gun out. If any of you are buying the idea, as 12 said, that it fell out when his pants were being pulled up, then I'm up here wasting my breath. I would add that you're all intelligent people, and if anybody is even remotely considering that, I would ask you to ask yourselves and to ask them, is that what you think, or are you trying to find a way to not convict this man because of who he is? The issue of treating everybody equally, it's paramount to our criminal justice system. So, again, back to the elements, you don't need to actually touch someone. The evidence is that he did. You do not need to intend to use the force, meaning you don't have to pull that gun, meaning that you're planning on shooting. You don't actually need to injure someone. You don't need to fire the gun. You don't even need to point the gun at the victim. This is in the instruction. And that also goes for the personal use of the firearm. Now, the one thing is, it has to be a firearm. And again, and I'm going to go back to this because it's so important. The defense is it was a prop gun. That's the issue in this case. They say it's prop gun. They say all the evidence shows it's prop gun. We say it's firearm. Once you decide that it is a firearm, that means that their entire defense has fallen apart. And now what Mr. Tacopina apparently wants you to do is say, well, even if the witnesses we put on live, even if it was a real gun, here's why it was self-defense. There's an old story about it's a civil case, civil lawyer, and he has a dog bite case, and he is defending his client with the dog, and they're being sued. The client is being sued because his dog has allegedly bit somebody. He gets up in closing argument, and he says as follows: "Hey, listen, my client's dog, there's no way he could have done any kind of damage to the plaintiff because he was on a leash. He was in the yard, could not have gotten to where he says he got. But if you find that he was loose, the dog's old, and he couldn't have done any damage with those old teeth of his. But okay, if you find that he was off leash, and he had some big teeth, well, my final defense is my client doesn't own a dog." That's what we have here. It's no different. It's a prop gun.
God, this is
Absolutely
crazy.
prop gun. Evidence doesn't show it's a prop gun, but it's a prop gun. But if you find it's not a prop gun, here's why Rocky fired a real gun in self-defense. It is almost insulting because it is so inconsistent. So when a defendant equips and positions himself to carry out a battery, he has the present ability required, even if some steps remain to be taken. This is basically saying once he's taken that gun out and he's committed the assault, when that gun comes out, at that point in time, the assault's done. So this is the 3470, the right to self-defense. And this is really important because remember, it only applies if it is a real gun and not a prop gun. But it's a little more than that because what it basically says
Ghost Dog
is you have
TV
to
said, "I
show
think he just
that
lost
they
the
are acting
case."
in lawful self-defense or of defense of another.
You mean the
defense position in
prosecutor?
this case
Do you mean the
is that
prosecutor lost the case? Who lost the case?
the
Ghost
defendant was
Dog.
acting to protect Relly and Gills.
Yeah, I think he said almost
But
insult the
it's more
counsel,
than
telling the
that,
jury
okay?
stories about other lawyers, please. Yeah, I
So
think he's
basically
been
they're
talking to the
saying
jury like
that-
they're little kids.
Defendant believed that he, Gills, and Twelby were in imminent danger, okay, of suffering bodily injury. And by the way, and you all know this, if someone is in danger of being touched
What up, it's LA
unlawfully,
Buck.
you can't shoot them, okay? You don't have to actually go through jury instructions to figure that out, okay? If I go and I slap one of you guys, you can't shoot me. And why is that? Because he's got to believe that the immediate use of force was necessary to defend against the danger and that it was no more force than was reasonably necessary to defend against the danger. So what does all this mean? Well, they're basically claiming that the defendant used a prop gun, which means self-defense doesn't apply. So as soon as you find that out, you're done. But they're also arguing, hey, if you find, well, then it was a gun, even though that's not our argument. And Mr. Tacopina wouldn't come out and say it.
He's saying
But
if you
that's
find
what the law
either
is.
of those, he's
If you don't believe me, you can ask the judge. Self-defense only applies in this case if it's a real gun. And the problem is, it also only applies if the force used was no more than reasonably necessary to defend against that danger. And now let's look at what that alleged danger is. There is no beating up of Gills, okay? There was no beating up of Gills. It's a lie. It's not true. You see the video. But even if somehow you wanted to argue it, and you know it's a lie, because you can see that the gun, you can't see what the item is. So let's be clear. You can see Rocky pulling something out. You can't tell what it is. But you can then see that what he takes, he ends up putting out in front of him and aiming and shooting. That is what prompts Relly to grab Ills. They say, well, he had to use, I guess, and MrCheckpoint can never argue this. He can't because it's inconsistent with his theory. But the theory would have to be that Rocky ended up
Tell Snoop I said
firing
what
the
up.
gun at Ills. I'm sorry, at
He's watching
Terrell
right now? You got
because
Snoop
Ills
watching
was
now?
in imminent danger. What imminent danger? He's got no injury. It's made up. The defense is created. It didn't happen. Very important. Belief in future harm is not sufficient. So even if you somehow believe that Relly was going to cause future harm, it doesn't work. He has to have
Say
belief
that.
at the time.
When's
that
our
there
music
was
video coming
imminent
out?
danger
Nurse
of
Sarah.
bodily injury. Imminent danger of bodily injury. Okay? That's what you need. It has to be reasonable, and he has to act because of that belief. You don't have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the defense didn't really argue it, because they are riding the boat. Their position is the dog was off the leash. Sorry, the dog was on the leash. Not that the dog had no teeth, and not that the guy didn't own the dog. But in the end, that's what their argument requires. You have to believe inconsistent defenses. It just doesn't work. Now again, the slightest touching, we're not talking about the slightest touching. They're basically saying that in the first incident, they're trying to argue that Relly is the aggressor when the facts in the video don't show it. Even if he grabbed his arm, no one says he has a weapon. You cannot pull a gun on somebody who doesn't have a weapon, who's not
Shout out
physically
Canada.
hurting you. You can't threaten him with a firearm. I mean, I don't have to explain that to you all. You understand that. You can't do it. It doesn't work. So we have the burden of proving that beyond a reasonable doubt. However, again, it doesn't come into existence until you find that it was a real gun. And once you find it's a real gun, it means their entire defense was fabricated. It wasn't true. Automatically. There was no way that it could be a real gun and the defense was not fabricated. Those are impossible. Those are mutually inconsistent possibilities. And when I say possibilities, meaning alternatives. So, a person who starts a fight has a right to self-defense. Relly did not start this fight. The defendant started this fight. And he has to actually, in good faith, he's got to try to stop fighting, which he doesn't. He's the aggressor. Both incidents. And in no way is element 2 satisfied either. So you can play games debating how a self-defense claim that the defense is not even relying on doesn't apply to the case. But you know that. Their defense is, no question, it's prop gun. A person also cannot claim self-defense if they are the one that provokes a fight or quarrel with the intent to create an excuse to use force.
If you're with
And that's what
them,
happened here.
my wife has a question.
Relly didn't even use any force. Basically, the defendant assaults him with a firearm because he's mad at him. Shoots at him again because either Relly said something or he's still angry. So, in the end, the statements...
Thank you, Petro. Appreciate that.
Terrell gave a lot of statements in this case. And about all the issues that matter, he was consistent. Now, they want to say, but wait a minute. He originally said it was 3 to 4 shots. And imagine for a second. Remember, he doesn't know in advance the defendant is going to shoot. So his memory, and you can all, it's not hard to imagine, you're in a situation where you believe you're fighting for your life. How do you know that Relly was fighting for his life? He's telling Wally he was fighting for his life. He's saying, the defendant tried to take him from his daughter. He believes at the time the defendant has fired 3 or 4 shots. And when he talks to Wally, he says 5 shots. That doesn't matter. That's not a question of credibility, and here's why. if Relly were making this up, and remember what they're saying, they're also saying that Relly had to have planted the 9mm casings. Okay? And let's talk about that for a second, because it's important. They are saying, hey, listen, Relly was out here 2 weeks before this shooting, and we don't know that he went back home. So apparently, Relly planned this out in advance. He got 9mm casings from when he went target shooting, knowing that 2 weeks later the defendant would be upset with him, would text him repeatedly, and would assault him with a 9mm firearm, and he would have casings ready to put at the scene. But just to make it extra difficult, he's going to tell the cops, you know what, I got shot there were 3 or 4 gunshots, but he's only going to turn in 2 casings. So remember, if he's making up this whole thing, which of course he isn't, he is certainly going to produce the amount of casings at the scene that he is saying happened. That's an irrefutable concept. And that's not what occurs. And the idea that somehow Relly is Nostradamus and knows all these things are going to happen. And let's look at what have had to have occurred. It's 10 p.m. on a Saturday night in Hollywood. Relly doesn't live here. We know from ASAP Lou, he can't go out and buy ammunition. He doesn't have a gun. So he certainly could not have, after this incident, bought a gun, fired the ammunition, and dumped it at the scene. So that means that he's carrying around 9mm casings just in case the defendant assaults him. It's absurd. Then they say, well, wait a minute. You know that it's made up because look at the magazine that's found at the defendant's house. And now we go back to ASAP Lou. Listen, ASAP Lou, Prosecutorial, he really covered it pretty accurately. He's the Swiss Army knife of assistants, advisors, security stuff. You need a personal assistant, lose your guy. You need someone to give you advice on security, lose your guy. You need someone to come over to stay for a search warrant, lose your guy. You need someone to help you get a prop gun, lose your guy. You need someone to get rid of that prop gun after an incident where that prop gun will prove you to be innocent, lose your guy. Lou's version of what happened is nearly impossible. What is that version? And this is really important because remember, we didn't find out about it at the time. So here's what we know. The evidence in this case that you have, and I confronted the witnesses, is that 12 testified that what he told the defense, what was in the statement we were given, was that the defendant decided to carry a prop gun because he had been the victim of home invasions and violence. Let's just look at that for a moment. Nothing about any particular incidents. And then he gets on the stand and he starts testifying about all these incidents. But he says, oh, well, I told them. I told them about it. I think I told them. I guess I don't know. These alleged incidents of prior violence. And supposedly there's a security person. Just think about this for a moment. 12 testifies that the defendant and he were stabbed at a club with a knife. That there's been a crazy stalker inside the defendant's house. That he's been the victim of other violence. And we're to believe that a security consultant said, hey, you know what you should do? You should carry a fake gun. Because individuals who are going to, and by the way, a home invasion, defense counsel, wait a minute, it's different when you're at your home. That's what 12 said. Those were his words. Home invasions and violence. Someone comes in your home. How is a prop gun going to help you? How is a prop gun going to help you against anybody? As soon as you pull a prop gun on somebody, they are going to believe that that prop gun is real. And if they have their own weapon, out of necessity, they're going to have to fire back. It's not just bad advice. It's complete insanity and it's made up. But the situation here is even worse. Because remember, they're saying that Relly knew it was a prop gun from the start. if he knows it's a prop gun, then what is the use in Rocky pulling it out in the first place? It would have no value. Relly said, of course I didn't know it was a prop gun. It wasn't a prop gun. It shot me. But the idea, you don't even need Relly's testimony. The idea, they're the ones saying, their defense is, Relly knew it was a prop gun. He stands up and says, put that fake-ass gun away. You look at him in the second incident. Is he acting like that's a fake-ass gun? Is anyone acting like it's a fake-ass gun? Is the defendant acting like it's a fake-ass gun? Of course not, because it wasn't fake. And now let's look at Lou. Lou says, well, so here's what happened. Originally, we hear nothing about the circumstances of I went over to the house and we were going to go shooting. We don't hear any of that. All that he says, now he said, I might have told the defense, I might not have, I don't remember. I didn't get into particulars. Are you kidding me? It's the entire case. But all of a sudden, he gets on the stand and he says, for the first time, well, here's what happened. I was going to teach the defendant we were going to go shooting at a gun range. So I brought my Glock 380, which does not use 9mm ammunition, and I brought my Smith & Wesson 9mm, which cannot use a Glock 9mm Glock 43 magazine. It won't fit. They don't even look anywhere the same, and that is from Lou. Look completely different. He says, he gets over to the house, and that's when he realizes for the first time, oh my God, I bought the wrong magazine for my Glock. Now, does it make sense that he felt a need to go out and buy a magazine for his gun, and then did not find out for some period of time, he wouldn't say where he bought it, when he bought it, and it was not for the right gun, but he made another mistake that he clearly wasn't aware of. I confronted him with the fact, he said, well, so I realized that when I was over there, I tried to put the 9mm, or the 380 ammunition in, and it wouldn't fit. Okay. But why was it found loaded completely with 9mm ammunition? As soon as it didn't fit, he would stop. And after he says, well, I'm a fidgety dude. I'm a fidgety dude. So while I was drinking, I was fidgeting, just loading a gun, loading a magazine for a gun I don't have and the defendant doesn't have. They spent a lot of time telling you, well, wait a minute. That magazine is new, hasn't been used. I asked Lou, isn't it true, Lou, that when you buy a gun, a new gun, most of the time they come with 2 magazines? Well, I don't know. I usually only buy one. Well, it's interesting because he clearly went out and bought a second magazine for the 380, so not quite understanding what that means. But what is very clear, ladies and gentlemen, is here's what happened. Lou doesn't own a Glock 43. He's never had one registered, so he has no reason to have a magazine for a gun he doesn't own. The defendant doesn't have a Glock 43 magazine. He has no reason to have a Glock 43 magazine for a gun he doesn't own. However, there is evidence that suggests that the gun that was used in this crime was a Glock 43. It doesn't have to be, but it is consistent with the evidence. And what is clear is that the defendant got rid of the gun after the incident. Now, he says the gun he got rid of was a prop gun. That's not what the evidence shows. He got rid of that 9mm and the magazine that went with it. But he clearly forgot that in his closet was a second magazine for that gun. A magazine that clearly was not being used in that gun and very well might have been new because he was using the magazine that was in the gun when it was fired at Relly. So Lou's version is completely impeached, but it's even worse than that. So They apparently have this information. Twelby and Lou have information about this prop gun that will completely prove that the defendant did not commit this crime. And when does it get turned over to prosecutors and police for the first time? January 20th, the day before this trial started. Now they say, oh no, but actually, we told them about it in August 16th or 17th of 2024. That's still almost 3 years after the incident occurred. Remember, ASAP Lou is at the house when the search warrant is served. He didn't even have to go to the police. All he has to do is say, hey, you know what? That magazine, that 9mm magazine, that's mine. By the way, it was a prop gun that he had. Nothing. You know why he didn't say it? Because he hadn't made up the defense yet. That's why. Do you know why Twelby didn't say anything? Because he hadn't made up the defense yet. That's what the evidence shows. And then what happened? Literally on February 9th, the morning that Lou is going to testify, we are given information. Oh, it turns out that Lou gave the gun to somebody in New York. And that's why they don't have the gun. Now remember, we're finding this out on what is basically the last day of the trial. We don't have the ability to get that person. But the defense, that's someone they've known about all along. Where is he to testify about this gun? They're saying we have to bring this person out here when there's no reason to believe that anything that person is going to say is true. But we're supposed to bring that person out here who we don't even know exists to prove that it's not a prop gun. That it's not a prop gun when that's their witness. Do you not think for a moment that if that witness could have withstood cross-examination, they would have brought him out here? Of course they would have. And how do you know that any of this is true? Because you're instructed on it. So the defense spent a long time attacking me, primarily me, attacking Relic. Where is the instruction about evidence that I ended up fabricating? It says if the defendant tried to hide evidence or discourage someone from testifying against him, that conduct may show that he was aware of his guilt. What does that mean? That instruction is because the defendant, by his own, meaning the defense admission, through their witnesses, is that the defendant got rid of the prop gun. The piece of evidence that would demonstrate that he's innocent of these charges, that he got rid of that gun after the incident. The judge isn't going to give that instruction unless that instruction is something you can consider. Not going to do it. What does it say? If the defendant tried to hide evidence or discourage someone from testifying against him, that conduct may show that he was aware of his guilt. If you conclude that the defendant made such an attempt, it is up to you to decide its meaning and importance. However, evidence of such an attempt cannot prove guilt by itself. So in other words, just because the defendant got rid of the gun, that's not enough to prove to you by itself that the defendant is guilty of these crimes. But when you put it with everything else, it is a huge piece of evidence. If someone other than the defendant tried to create false evidence, provide false testimony, or conceal or destroy evidence, that conduct may show the defendant was aware of his guilt. But only if the defendant was present and knew about that conduct, or if not present, authorized the other person's actions. Circumstantially, the evidence suggests that ASAP Lou and Twelby and Wally are not doing this on their own. The evidence, the direct evidence from Wally is that he talked to the defendant immediately afterwards, their conversation. The idea that ASAP Lou and ASAP Twelby were not having repeated conversations about this incident strains any even idea of reality. You all know that's not true. Of course they talked about it. Obviously, it's a huge incident that occurred. So that is an instruction you were given. It doesn't say anything about Relly. There's no instruction like that for Relly in this case. Flight. If the defendant fled immediately after the crime was committed, that conduct may show that he was aware of his guilt. What does that mean? After the incident, guys, the second incident, he takes off. If it is in fact, if it was simply a prop gun, why is he running? Why is 12 running? Why are they getting out of there? Why are they getting rid of the gun? I mean, I'm trying to argue to you guys, why is the sky blue? And I hope that when you're listening to it, I hope you're all understanding this is not a complicated, complex case. In the end, the evidence in this case, almost all of it, it's not circumstantial. So the video is direct evidence. It's direct evidence of what happened. The testimony of the witnesses is direct evidence. Relly's statement on the call is direct evidence. The testimony, as incredible and unreliable as it is, of Wally, of 12 and of ASAP Lou is direct evidence. This is not a circumstantial evidence case. About the only circumstantial evidence in this case that you have that matters is circumstantially we have to prove that the defendant pointed the gun at Relly in the first incident because we don't have it on video. But we've got his gun being pulled out, we have his gun in front of him, and we have Relly in that position. We have him fighting with Relly right before and fighting with him right after. So the only reasonable interpretation of that circumstantial evidence is what you're seeing. Defendant's failure to call logical witnesses. This is really important. I've mentioned this before. Every argument that the defense made, the defense, and again, I'm not blaming Mr. Tacopina. He calls them. Mr. Tacopina does not vouch for his witnesses, meaning, just as we don't. We call witnesses, and those witnesses testify, and you evaluate them. However, it is certainly legitimate that all these individuals that the defense is saying, why didn't the people call them? Those are witnesses that they are saying we have to introduce to disprove their fabricated defense, which we don't have the ability to do because they control that evidence and information. They've got the prop gun. We don't. They have these witnesses they don't tell us about. We don't. We have proven that this was not a prop gun in every way that we can. It defies common sense, it defies logic, and it defies all the other evidence that we've given. Now listen, I'm not blaming the defense for what they've come up with. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Okay? That's what they've tried to do. They have tried to take a case, and they got bad luck. Imagine, guys, for a second, if we didn't have those video cameras. Imagine what the defense would be. Well, you can't show anything happened. This is all made up. You got nothing. But we have the video. We have the gunshots. That's bad luck for the defendant. And again, that's the situation he made. That's his luck. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to go back there. And we talked a little bit about this before. Let's assume that somebody, when you go back there, starts saying, what if, isn't it possible that, could this have happened? You are not allowed to speculate outside the evidence. That also goes for things like, well, gosh, what if Rocky gets prison on this case? I don't want to go to prison. If any one of you feel that yourselves, you need to let the court know, I can't serve as a juror on this case. That's okay. Some of you during voir dire at points said, I don't know about certain things. And if you remember, the judge told different jurors, hey, listen, if at any point in time you cannot live up to your oath, let the judge know. If one of the rest of you decide, I'll give you an example. Let's say someone goes back there and they say, you know what, I really dislike DDA Lou. I don't like him. I didn't like him when I saw him. He's obnoxious, etc. Whatever. If that is what you are basing your verdict on, it's improper. It's misconduct. If someone says, I'm never going to convict on a case because I don't like Lou. If it's you and you can't get past it, you need to report yourself to the court. If it's someone else, they need to do it. We don't know if misconduct happens unless you let the court know about it. So if people, yourself, others are not living up to their responsibilities, you need to let everybody know. That goes the same for the celebrity issue. Okay? The defendant should not be convicted because he's a celebrity. But he also should not be acquitted because he's a celebrity. He should not be acquitted because he's got a lovely family. He should not be acquitted because he's successful and wealthy. He should not be acquitted because he can go out there and entertain people and make millions of dollars. Those are factors I'm not just recommending, you're not allowed to consider those factors. All you're doing is you're going to weigh the evidence in this case and you're going to come to your decision. Reasonable doubt in this case. So, proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof that leaves you with an abiding conviction that the charge is true. The evidence need not eliminate all possible doubt because everything in life is open to some possible or imaginary doubt. What does that mean? Well, it simply means that you're going back and you're going to look and you're going to say to yourselves, okay, here's the case that people presented. The people have presented evidence that the defendant used a real gun. Have we proven that it was a real gun? Not just from our case, but from the evidence that the defense put on as well. They've argued this is a prop gun. And when anybody goes back there and says, well, wait a minute, I don't like Relly, I don't find Relly credible. The problem is, what do you need to find Relly credible about? The evidence is they're admitting it's him. They're admitting it's a gun. They're admitting he fired it. They're admitting that's him at both locations. The only thing that they are really disputing is they're disputing that Rocky ever put the gun up to him in the first incident, which, by the way, once he pulls it out and he's pointing it and you can see it, he doesn't have to point it at him, but once that gun comes out in that situation, you can read the elements of 245. They've met it. The second incident's easy. He actually fires the gun. So, where exactly is Relly's credibility? Where is it material? It isn't. They have put Relly on trial in this case because in the end, he is a very convenient target. Legally, it doesn't work. Commonsensically, it doesn't work. But that's what they've argued. You can come and should come to the conclusion in this case, beyond a reasonable doubt, based on the video and based on the defense in this case. But if you need Relly's credibility, the best evidence you have comes from Wally, their witness, and that tape. That's the only thing you need to listen to. Any testimony in court, that's in court. Everyone knows why we're in court. That is the one piece of evidence coming from the defense where there's no argument that Relly knew he was being taped. There's no argument that he had any incentive to be untruthful. And you listen to him and you know what he is saying is true. He is shocked. He is basically telling Wally, dude, I tried to get money for him. He don't want to give me any money. Why'd you bring the boys in? He won't give me any money. He tried to kill me. He tried to shoot me. No question. By the way, Wally never mentions it's a prop gun. because the defense had not been thought of yet. We started off in this case very early on. We started off with the situation with Boomer. And Boomer is a very important illustration of the difference between what's reasonable and what's possible. And as you remember, we know what happened. We know that the evidence demonstrated that Boomer was the one that got into the trash. And the evidence has demonstrated in this case, beyond any reasonable doubt whatsoever, that the defendant, Keem Mayers, that on November 6th, 2021, that he committed these crimes.
Wait, why did he just show photos of the dog? Can someone explain that?
We've done our job in this case. We have. We've put on more than enough evidence through our case, through the cross-examination of witnesses. We've done our job. I'm going to ask you all to do yours, whether you want to convict the defendant or not, based on the evidence. That's what you're compelled to do. Because we can't have individuals, you can't have it, deciding that because they're angry, or they're upset, or they've been disrespected, that they're going to be allowed to go out and shoot at people on the street on a busy Saturday night. We cannot have it. As you go back there, and I'm going to say this again, the first thing that I would ask you to do is to decide, was this a prop gun or not? And if you decide it is a prop gun, for those of you who do, you're going to have to get past all of the nonsensical evidence in this case. You need to ask yourselves, are you following the evidence? Are you following your head, or are you following your heart for whatever reason? Once you do that, the case is over, because that means the defense is fabricated. That means it was a real gun. That means you can't believe anything that was said by any of their witnesses. And that means that in the end, the defendant used a real firearm and committed these crimes. Again, as defense counsel stated, I want to
Prop
thank you
gun,
all
I think innocent. Prop gun and innocent.
and for your attention. And I too want to thank Judge Arnold. It's not been an easy case. And I want to ask, to the best of your ability, when you go back there, you pretend that he's not ASAP Rocky. You pretend that he's just a guy named Keem Mayers. And you treat him the way you would treat anybody else who was accused of these crimes with this evidence. And when you return a guilty verdict, that is not on you. That's on him. Because that is what the evidence has demonstrated. Do not let anybody tell you that you own his conduct.
He's about to wrap up here.
On November 6th, he made a very foolish decision. An illegal decision. A criminal decision. A decision that could have hurt individuals far worse than what happened. And it's your job and your responsibility to hold him accountable. Because if we're not going to hold privileged people accountable, who are we going to hold accountable? Again, thank you for your time and attention.
So the defense attorney, it looks like, pulled the judge and the prosecutor in a little side meeting here. Now we don't have access to the audio for, so we're just gonna wait and see. The jury should deliberate, I believe, after this. 3:51. I don't know. They've been getting out at 4, so I think maybe they'll get out here and then join, and then 9 a.m. maybe tomorrow. Or no, not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday, so it'd be is Monday a holiday? I think Monday is President's Day. So Tuesday, the 18th, I guess. But I'm not certain of that. Wow, it's over. It could be. I don't know. I don't know if they'll now break and end for the day, or I think they'll send the jury home. I think innocent too. I think innocent. No, it's President's Day. Shout out attorney V. James D. Simone Law. Call 310-693-5561. He's a civil rights law attorney and employment law attorney. He's been doing this for 40 plus years. He's handled major cases. I would trust him with my own case. He's someone who gets the job done. Check out attorney V. James D. Simone Law. Get free case evaluations, 310-693-5561. I don't know what that dog had to do with the case. I tuned out for like 2 seconds and then I saw dogs on the screen. I don't know. Man, so this was day 13. Prosecutor just gave a, oh my God, it was so long. It was such a long closing. I thought boring. Yeah, no way, right? So someone on YouTube says, no way they start deliberations today. I don't think the prosecution would risk that.
The first remark relates to the jury instruction on circumstantial evidence. It's jury instruction number 224. Jury instruction number 224 tells you everything you need to know about circumstantial evidence. There was some question about whether it was shown in its entirety. The entire jury instruction is in 224. Another thing I want to mention to you is I think it is very obvious that everyone at that table left it all out on the field. Everybody put out 150%. I think that's very evident. All right. I want to hopefully focus your duties by kind of summarizing something that both sides have mentioned to you. All right. The people have the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the gun was real. If the people have not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Mayers used a real 9mm, then the verdict is not guilty. If you do find that that the gun was real, then you look at the 5 elements that are listed for assault with a semi-automatic pistol. That's jury instruction 875. You have to decide whether those elements, all 5 elements, have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Then also you can consider the jury instructions on self-defense and the defense of others. You have that jury instruction as well. So I'm hoping that this assists you in kind of focusing how you deliberate. All right, I'm going to read the two final jury instructions when I'm finished with this.
I believe it was a prop gun.
send
So if
you
it's
to
a
where
prop
you're
gun,
gonna be
he's
deliberating.
innocent because
You
he's
won't be
charged with
deliberating
shooting a
in
gun.
the
There's
jury
no
deliberation room
charge
here in this
for
court.
a prop
You'll
gun.
be deliberating
So
in
if you
the deliberation
think it's a
room
prop
that
gun,
is
or you
from
have
my
no
court, which is Department
reason to
115 on the
believe
11th
it
floor.
is a real gun,
So when I release you,
he's innocent.
I'd like you to go to the 11th floor and go to Department 115. Department 115, it's right there when you get off the elevators. And Alex will meet you up there. He'll escort you into the jury deliberation room. You can take all of your materials, you can set them down, and you can leave for the day. On Tuesday, you must be here by 9 a.m. Jury deliberations start at 9 a.m.
Tuesday at 9, so this is ending
And
now.
when you show up on Tuesday, you're to gather outside the courtroom doors of Department 115 on the 11th floor. Did you want to say something?
Yes.
Same thing?
That's not too much of a problem. Can we start at 9:30? If possible. If everyone's okay with that. Like, adjourn.
Is that what you all want? All right, I'm seeing nods. Yeah, all right, 9:30.
Thank you.
9:30. All right, here are the final two.
9:30 they meet
When you go to the
Tuesday.
jury room, the
Yeah.
first thing you should do is choose a foreperson. The foreperson should see to it that your discussions are carried on in an organized way and that everyone has a fair chance to be heard. It is your duty to talk with one another and to deliberate in the jury room. You should try to agree on a verdict if you can. Each of you must decide the case for yourself, but only after you have discussed the evidence with the other jurors. Do not hesitate to change your mind if you become convinced that you are wrong, but do not change your mind just because other jurors disagree with you. Keep an open mind and openly exchange your thoughts and ideas about this case. Stating your opinions too strongly at the beginning or immediately announcing how you plan to vote may interfere with an open discussion. Please treat one another courteously. Your role is to be an impartial judge of the facts, not to act as an advocate for one side or the other. As I told you at the beginning of the trial, do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, including, but not limited to, your spouse or other family, or friends, spiritual leaders or advisors or therapists. You must discuss the case only in the jury room and only when all jurors are present. Do not discuss your deliberations with anyone. Do not communicate using social media during your deliberations. It is very important that you not use the internet in any way in connection with this case during your deliberations. During the trial, several items were received into evidence as exhibits. You may examine whatever exhibits you think will help you in your deliberations. These exhibits will be sent into the jury room when you begin to deliberate. I made arrangements for a screen, a projection screen, to be brought into the jury deliberation that's actually bigger than that. So if you want to review the videos, you'll be able to do that. We're going to need a clean computer, though, that they can use. You've got to connect the computer to the projector, which is connected to the screen. Mark, our audio visual guy, he can show you how to do that if necessary. If you need to communicate with me while you are deliberating, send a note through the bailiff signed by the foreperson or by one or more members of the jury. To have a complete record of this trial, it is important that you not communicate with me except by a written note. If you have questions, I will talk with the attorneys before I answer, so it may take some time. You should continue your deliberations while you wait for my answer. I will answer any questions in writing or orally here in open court. Do not reveal to me or anyone else how the vote stands on the question of guilt or issues in this case unless I ask you to do so. Your verdict on each count and the special finding of the firearm allegation must be unanimous. This means that to return a verdict, all of you must agree to it. Do not reach a decision by the flip of a coin or by any other similar act. It is not my role to tell you what your verdict should be. Do not take anything I said or did during the trial as an indication of what I think about the facts, the witnesses, or what your verdict should be. You must reach your verdict without any consideration of punishment. You'll be given verdict forms. As soon as all jurors have agreed on a verdict, the foreperson must date and sign the appropriate verdict forms and notify the bailiff. If you are able to reach a unanimous decision on only one of the charges, fill in that verdict form only and notify the bailiff. Return any unsigned verdict form. To the alternate jurors, the jury will soon be deliberating, but you are still alternate jurors, and you are bound by my earlier instructions about your conduct. Do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, not even your family or friends, and not even with each other. Do not have any contact with the deliberating jurors. Do not decide how you would vote if you were deliberating. Do not form or express an opinion about the issues in this case unless you are substituted in for one of the deliberating jurors. Will the clerk please swear the bailiff?
Yes, Your Honor. Please raise your right hand. Thank you. You solemnly state that you will take charge of the jury and keep them together. You will not speak to them yourself, nor allow anyone else to speak to them on matters connected to this case, except by order of the court. When they have agreed on a verdict, you will return into court. Furthermore, that you take charge of the alternate jurors, keep them apart from the jury, whether delivering on cause, until otherwise instructed by the court, so help you God.
All right, the case is now yours. Alex is going to meet you on the 11th floor in front of Department 115. He will escort the 12 of you into the jury deliberation room. You can put your materials down, and then you can leave for the day. Remember, 9 o'clock Tuesday, 9:30 Tuesday, please be outside the courtroom doors, not here, Department 115 on the 11th floor. For the 4 alternates, I'd like you also to go up to the 11th floor now, and what I'm going to want you to do is to give Deputy Bennett your contact numbers. I assume you all have cell phones? All right, I'd like you to give Deputy Bennett your cell phone numbers so we can reach you in case we need you. And if we do call you, we're going to need you quickly. So while the jury is deliberating, you can be in the hallway, you can be in the jury assembly room downstairs, you can walk around, you can be in the cafeteria, but you have to be ready, willing, and able to come to the courtroom if you're summoned. All right, you folks are going to be excused now. Take all of your materials. Council needs to remain. We have a couple of council.
Your Honor, what should the alternates do with our materials?
Yeah. You can leave those. We have chairs upstairs in Department 115. You can just find a spot and you can leave them there.
Thank you.
Everybody take all of your transcripts, notes, notebooks.
It looks like that's it. Closing arguments. It will resume Tuesday at 9:30. It will resume Tuesday at 9:30. I believe I'll be able to stream it again. And appreciate y'all being here. If you're just tuning in, we have 3 episodes out on the Spotify podcast, Apple podcast, Amazon, anywhere where you listen to podcasts. You can search MrCheckpoint. Let me turn this down. And yeah, that's good. Appreciate y'all. Be safe. Oh, we need more donations for AFTP for the veterans at the West LA VA. You can go to alwaysforthepeople.com, alwaysforthepeople.com. It goes to an Amazon wish list. If you can check out the dog food and certain things there, that's awesome. And then, as I mentioned, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, search Mr. Checkpoint. Give the first couple episodes a listen. Rate it 5 stars if you don't mind. And check us out on Substack. Peace. First, I have to end this.